I'm so excited to tell you about the Kroger OptUp app. OptUp is your virtual assistant for healthier shopping. I've been using OptUp with my grocery shopping, and now I'm more mindful as I make food choices for my family at Kroger. What I love the most is how OptUp tracks my household score automatically based off what I'm purchasing at Kroger. OptUp also makes recommendations for healthier alternatives and nutrition facts of the foods we purchase. OptUp is very easy to use. Download it today in the App Store or Google Play. Welcome to the Produce Moms Podcast, where we believe there is a produce mom in all of us. I'm Lori Taylor, founder and CEO of the Produce Moms. For 10 years, I sold fresh produce to over 300 grocery stores in the U.S. And today, my team and I are fully focused on inspiring people to eat more fruits and vegetables. This show is just one of the ways that we hope to inspire you and your family to eat more produce and live a better life. If you like what you're hearing on the podcast, join our community of almost 40,000 in all 50 states and over 30 countries by visiting theproducemoms.com/subscribe. And be sure to subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes. Thanks for being here. Enjoy today's show. Hello, and welcome back to the Produce Moms Podcast. Today, we have another incredible guest, someone who is going to really start our dialogue here on the podcast with helping you understand some of the facts about your farming. This was one of the top topics when we surveyed our Facebook group, when we were putting together the strategy and the lineup for the Produce Moms Podcast. We asked our fans and followers, what kind of stuff is of interest to you? And the number one topic was facts and truth about how my food is farmed. For those of you that have been following along, you know that I personally have never farmed a day in my life or been involved with the production of food. And there's a lot that goes into it. Today, we're going to share a woman that I've had the pleasure of meeting and seeing in action. You might remember Ellen Thompson from our Facebook Lives that we did when I was out visiting Naturipe in the Watsonville area. Ellen is the breeding and research director at Pacific Berry Breeding. They are partnered with Naturipe. For right at about 10 years, Ellen has been working at Pacific Berry Breeding as the breeding and research director now. Her background is in horticulture and plant sciences. This is going to be a fascinating podcast. And without further ado, let's welcome Ellen. Ellen, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Lori, for having me. It's a pleasure to be your guest.
Oh, thank you. It was, and we'll have to make sure that in the blog, that the show notes that we put together for this broadcast, we will link that Facebook Live so people can kind of see what you do in action. But I think really the best place to start here with this podcast is just by simply asking you, what is plant breeding?
Plant breeding, classical plant breeding, also known as traditional plant breeding, is simply a selection process. There are people breeding in their backyards. There are people like me breeding as an occupation. And essentially what it is you are selecting things that you like, the good plants, for whatever your goals may be, and you're culling out things that you dislike. So, for example, a backyard breeder might find, a plant that has bigger tomatoes, and so they keep seeds from those tomatoes, while the next plant over had, tomatoes that had mildew, and so they don't want to keep that plant. And so I simply do the same thing with berries. I'm looking for ways to improve quality, flavor, yield, tolerance of environmental pressures, such as, susceptibilities to disease. And so every year through recurrent selection, we're looking to achieve those goals in berries.
Yeah, no, and I will say when I was out there, I was blown away. I didn't realize how many thorns were on these caneberry bushes.
Yes. Caneberries, collectively known as raspberries and blackberries, do have prickles or spines or thorns. And so we luckily do have thornless types,
Right.
and you can bet that through recurrent selection, we're trying to find the thornless ones to not only propagate, but also use in plant breeding.
Right. And obviously the reason we want to do that, you guys, I mean, even when I was there, I mean, that's actually more for the humans, you know, the workers on the farm. Like you don't want people, if we can harvest blackberries on a bush that does not have thorns, that's obviously the preference, right?
Well, it's my preference, certainly. And
Right,
anyone who's
right.
ever picked thorny blackberries, whether in the wild or cultivated, you know that you'll walk away with a few scratches.
Right, right. So you legitimately, I know this because Ellen taught this to me when I was out at Naturipe. But they take the pollen. And well, why don't you describe it? They take the pollen, and it's like they brush the flower on the pollen. And describe the process. You're going to do it better than me. Describe the process if you don't mind.
Happy to. So to create a cross in plant breeding, you have to apply pollen to a flower that has been prepared. And so so the first thing we do is we actually look for flowers that have not yet opened. The reason we need an unopened flower is so that a bee can't just fly by and land, and you know, bees have hairs on their body and pollen attaches to the hairs on their body and the pollen baskets on their legs, and bees are pollinators, right? That's what they do. And so we have to get to flowers, the raspberry and blackberry flowers, before they open. And so it's just at the stage, we call it popcorn stage, where some of the petals are visible, but the flower has. And so we use a razor blade and we cut along the base of the flower and pull off the sepals, petals, and the stamens. And so the stamens are actually what hold the pollen, but also inside that flower are the pistils. And so pistils are what we call the female parts, and stamens are the male parts of the flower. In the flower world, we have both male and female parts. And so we remove everything except the female parts. Then for the male parent, we go and we collect pollen, also from unopened flowers. And same reason, we don't want any cross-pollination or any contaminants from a wayward bee that may have landed. And so we have to extract the pollen, dry it overnight, and then when the prepared flowers are ready and receptive to pollen, we go through and hand apply pollen. Then we put a pollination bag over the prepared flower to exclude pollinators, and we wait and we watch and we hope. For raspberries, it takes about 45 days to go from pollination to ripe berry. For blackberries, it's more like 50 to 60 days. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I really was blown away when I saw what you did. I've had the pleasure of touring a lot of farms, but I've never actually toured a breeding and research area like what you do. And also, like, this is a great opportunity to kind of explain to people. So plant breeding is not, that is not GMO.
No. GMO is different than traditional and classical plant breeding efforts. One main difference is that classical plant breeding has been done for thousands of years, whereas GMO, genetically modified organisms, or genetic engineering, GE of plants, has only been done for, about 25, 30 years. So that's one big difference. So that indicates that genetic engineering of plants is a technology.
Correct.
And so, with the word organism, often bacteria are used to incorporate specific genes into a plant. And it kind of speeds up the process of obtaining a goal, whether it's yield or, in the case of golden rice. is a great example. The reason golden rice was created through genetic engineering was because there are an estimated 190 million children around the world that are deficient in vitamin A. And with rice being a staple crop, the idea was, okay, maybe we can solve this problem. The world could solve this problem of reducing people who are suffering and dying from vitamin A deficiency, feeding them rice that could be grown with vitamin A. So that technology can be used to solve global issues. Of course, it's also a technology that has to go through a number of testing. I mean, years and years of approval testing to make sure that it's not harmful to humans. So
correct, yeah.
It's genetic engineering or genetically modified organisms have to go through a very, very severe regulatory process. That's another big difference compared with classical or traditional plant breeding. We don't have any regulatory process. It's as natural as it comes, and it's been done for thousands of years through human history. So those are two main things. The other thing is the cost. The technology to genetically modify things is very, very expensive. And for specialty crops, like berries, apples, we simply do not have the time or the money to even go down that route. Right. Not to mention that there's some negative associations with the technology.
Yeah, there's definitely negative association around it. But I thank you for bringing up a big reason why GMO exists, and genetic engineering is something that is part of agriculture for for reasons. It's in my opinion, the biggest reason is what you just stated. It's got to solve some sort of global problem because it is a big investment and there's a lot of unknowns about it. But it is important to state that what Ellen does is not at all GMO. It is plant breeding is, like she said, as natural as it gets. And, and it's also important to state that there is no such thing as a GMO berry of any kind. So, those are two big points. But why do you have to do plant breeding though? I mean, I know you've explained that this has been happening since, human interaction with agriculture. Like it's been happening for thousands of years, but why?
Well, for many reasons. Breeding, you can improve crops. I mean, that's the main reason. If anyone has ever gone to pick wild blueberries or wild strawberries, wild blackberries, you know that the berries are tiny and they're very soft, although they're very delicious. And it's fun to go picking wild berries. But in order to feed people every day and promote consumption of berries, we need things that people like and that are, not only easy to grow, but also, bigger in size and something that can ship a long distance. So there are a number of reasons. In addition, markets change, tastes change, disease pressures change. So we're always trying to overcome any challenges that may be in front of us. And through plant breeding, we can very slowly and meticulously overcome through that recurrent selection process year after year.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Now, do you think that without plant breeding practices, do you think that berries and strawberries, the cane berries and strawberries would even exist today?
Absolutely. They do exist today in the wild. Okay. And in fact, blackberry species can be found on every continent around the world except for Antarctica.
I had no idea. Yeah, I had no idea. So I was blown away when I was at Pacific Berry Breeding with Naturipe. I was blown away at how many different varieties of blackberries and raspberries and strawberries existed. Like I had absolutely no idea. So
Yeah.
You want to shed some light, share some numbers on the different types of varieties that you guys are, researching?
Yeah. So in plant breeder speak, a variety is something that has gone through the plant breeding process, and it's taken many years to develop a variety.
Right. You told me it takes
so
sometimes like up to 20 years. Is that correct?
For caneberries, it takes on average, I would say 8 to 10 years. But other crops, such as apples, because it's a tree and it takes many years for a tree to even come into bearing, can take upwards of 20 to 25 years to develop a variety. Right. That's a long time.
Right. It's a very long time.
And even 8 to 10 years is a long time.
Is a very long time. Yes, it sure is. Yes. Okay. So maybe I'm using the wrong lingo, but what do you call the different species that you're testing? Like all the different berries that you had there that you were tagging and whatnot?
So that cross doing pollination that I described earlier, that is how we first developed seed, and those seeds get germinated and we plant out seedlings, and then in that group of seedlings, through the selection effort, I'm looking for something specific, because again, I know who mom is, I know who dad is, and I'm looking for something preferably better than both parents. Bigger berries, sweeter, more productive, but it depends on the goal. Maybe I'm looking for thornlessness or resistance to rust on the leaves, something like that. So first we have a seed, then we have a seedling. If I find a seedling that has good merit, then it becomes a selection. In selection, we have one plant, and that selection then the following year gets propagated from root. So through natural propagation.
And when you say propagated, what does that mean? Does that mean like you have one master plant and then you do you pull part of it off and plant another plant?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I know people probably are familiar with that process. Like I know anyone who has hostas in their backyard, you do that. Okay.
Yes.
So just want to make sure that I'm following along, and all of our listeners are too. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. In your home garden, your lilies get clumped up. You can split them and divide them. So that's what we do. We do a division of the crown. Raspberries and blackberries have a crown at the base, and that's where the canes grow from. So we divide the crown, and from one master plant, we make many. And many for us means 10. And so then we not only have one plant, then we can plant out 10, and we can collect berries from those 10 plants from that selection, evaluate the merits of the quality of the fruit. And then if they are looking really good, we'll propagate more and send them out to growers or grower partners, and put them on different soils and different conditions, different climates, sometimes different countries. And we'll see how the plants perform. And that takes a couple of years, when we have our 10 plant set, that takes a couple of years of data evaluation. And then if it goes out to growers, it takes another couple of years. And then if everyone really likes it and the consensus is, this should be a variety, then it becomes a variety, and it gets a name, it gets a plant patent from the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. And then, the sky's the limit. It could be a variety that sticks around for a long, long time, or it could be a short-lived variety. And so we have a collection of varieties that are, from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, for many years of efforts of plant breeding. And they have different characteristics that we're trying to pull into our breeding program, and then to develop new varieties for our growers. And
that's great.
Consumers.
So under your leadership as the breeding and research director, since you've been at Pacific Berry Breeding now for 10 years, have you had the chance to see one of your selections make it all the way through?
I have. I'm happy to say.
That's gotta be exciting, huh?
It's really exciting. Yes. In fact, we released 3 new raspberry varieties last year, and one of those 3 is looking like it's really going to take off. And I, of course, am very pleased, and the growers are very happy, and we've had good feedback from consumers as well.
That's great. So, I hope you guys are learning as much as I have from Ellen. We are unfortunately closing in on the time for today's broadcast. I feel like I could, first of all, just listen to Ellen forever. You've got that soothing voice. So, and second of all, your knowledge just amazes me. And as someone who is very passionate about fresh produce, I'm learning so much. I still find myself, even with 10 years of experience in this industry, stories like yours, the work that you do, it fascinates me. And it's an essential component within our ability to feed the world that I really didn't even realize how intense it was. It takes, 8 to 10 years for these new varieties to become available. So, amazing. But I would like to know how you like working with Naturipe.
I love working with Naturipe. They're a fantastic partner. And one of the main reasons that I like working for Naturipe is that they have been a grower cooperative for over 100 years. They started in 1917 as a grower-owned partnership dedicated to sustainably producing berries grown by working family farmers. So for over 100 years, it's families that are growing berries for people like us, people like you.
Yeah, it really is quite the story. We're going to, we'll be obviously sharing more about Naturipe and all the different family farming stories that are behind that Naturipe brand, throughout the course of the year. It really is a remarkable company that certainly empowered the produce moms, by being one of our brand partners and working with us to help tell their story. It allows us to make our big impact with all the families and the moms that follow along with what we do. So couldn't be more proud to be in the partnership with Naturipe. I'm a big believer in their company culture. That's why I had to ask, because I think, man, this is a company that really is doing it right, and the sustainability program, the Cultivate with Care program, is remarkable. And I can see, as I learn more about that program, and I could see it in action when I was visiting the fields, when I was meeting you. That culture isn't just, like in the office, it's throughout the whole company. As far as I can tell, it's really cool.
It is really cool, Lori, and we're so glad we could have you out, and I hope you'll come visit us again.
You know what? I would love that. Thank you. So, as someone who knows so much, you spend your whole day with these berries. If you could tell moms one thing about Naturipe berries, what would it be?
The one thing I would tell moms about Naturipe berries is that they are packed with nutrients. They're packed with passion. They're grown by family farms. And then, of course, there's a breeder like me behind it that really cares about what we do and what we grow. So there's a lot in that little berry, aside from being sweet and delicious and healthy for you.
I love that. A lot of love, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So, all right. So where can people go to learn more? I mean, we'll definitely share, like I said, in the show notes, we'll share the live video so you can really see the work that Ellen has described here on the podcast that she does at Pacific Berry Breeding. Ellen, where can people go to learn more about Naturipe?
They can go to naturipefarms.com and learn how we grow and how we cultivate with care.
Awesome. Yes. And they're on all social platforms, you guys. We have a lot of Naturipe content on the producemoms.com. And Ellen, this has just been a true pleasure. Thank you for helping us really kick off the podcast topic of facts about your food. It's an important topic, one that we need to do, one that we need to continue to explore and help people like yourself that are working day in and day out to make sure that safe, delicious food is brought into homes around the world. We need to continue to share these kind of stories. So I really thank you so much for sharing what you do as the breeding and research director at Pacific Berry Breeding.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Lori. Thank you for having me as your guest.
Well, thank you. All right. Well, that's a wrap. So I want to thank you, Ellen, for being part of today's show, and everyone who tuned in and listened. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Produce Moms Podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a featured guest, just send an email to lori@theproducemoms.com. We know there is a produce mom in you because there's a produce mom in all of us. Join our community on Facebook and all social platforms. Help us change the way America eats. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.